Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, episode 36. Scariest 36. Scariest Things is your gateway to the tropes and trends of the horror genre, where tonight we are covering the greatest horror films of all time, number 70 to 61 in the top 100 horror movies of all time.
All right.
So, all right is right. Is right. You know what? The last 10 we just covered, 80 to 71, I think that's been my favorite grouping so far.
Well, as it should be, because we're getting closer and closer to the top, right?
Yes, but that was a solid grouping. 80 to 71. If you haven't listened to that podcast yet, go listen to it, because it's there was definitely some surprises, but also some really, really good films.
I think the thing I liked about 80 to 71 is that it gave us an opportunity to find some new stuff that I wasn't familiar with.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think because as you point out, as we get closer and closer and closer and closer to the top 25, top 10, top 5, etc., you're going to know all these films.
Yeah,
and so
less of a need to do binging prior to.
And it's just going to be us blathering on and on about stuff you already know about. Whereas a lot of the stuff that we're covering right now in the top 50 of the top 100 is stuff that you're probably not familiar with, because we ain't familiar with.
Right. Unless if you've dived in so deep that you know this already, you're probably one of our jury.
Yes. So what has been your biggest surprise now that we are 30 films into the top 100? What is the biggest surprise? What is the film that you just went, what?
So far, what's it doing on the list? I'll be honest, I thought Friday the 13th Part 6. It's like, why is that one? Now, granted...
worst trailer ever.
Yeah, it was just like, of all the Friday the 13th...
I don't mind saying that.
Well, and I think we've mentioned this before, that the fact that Friday the 13th 1 and 2, which are probably the superior two films of the series... Oh,
for sure. Yeah. Number one.
Surprises me.
The most superior.
I can say I am grateful that Black Sunday made it on the list.
Black Sunday is good.
That was a movie that I think is underappreciated, that I'm glad managed.
But not a big surprise, though.
No, not a surprise. Let's see if I'm going through this list. Spooky Encounters. Okay. Never heard of it.
Okay.
Never heard of Spooky Encounters.
I would say,
or Satan's Triangle. I've never heard of Satan's Triangle.
I would say for me, my biggest surprise is number 93 we had on the list, which was Event Horizon, because it's just it's a terrible film.
That may be because we're not going to have too many movies that are duds. Coming up.
No, from here on out, I think the films, it's just going to be, again, we're going to be splitting the hair that we've already split.
Yeah, the question will be more horror or not, and less of does it belong in the top 100.
Yep. All right, so let's jump right into it with number 70. Actually, we had a tie at 69, which is kind of weird, but we did. We had a tie for two films, and the two films, let's just cover them both, because I think they're basically in the same
part of the horror universe.
Yes, a couple years apart. Of course, we had the 1987 film Monster Squad and the 1984 film Gremlins.
From Joe Dante,
yeah. Both films, I think, as I say, they're not only a couple years apart, but they look, act, and feel very similar. Yeah, Squad. I think Monster Squad is probably weirdly become more of a beloved film than even Gremlins. In fact, I just there's going to be released. It may have already been released, but there's a film out this year, 2018, that is sort of it's a documentary about the fandom around Monster Squad.
Is that Wolfman's Got Nards?
It is called Wolfman's Got Nards,
yeah, which is like playing an Overlook.
Yes, which is one of the. I mean, Wolfman's Got Nards for me, both in the positive and the negative, summarizes Monster Squad. It's a very funny line, but so it's Wolfman. It's the two of the main characters are towards the end of the film. They're battling Wolfman, and he says, just kick him in the nards, and he says, why? I'm not going to kick him in the nards. And he says, just kick him in the nards, and he kicks him. Wolfman falls over, and he says, oh my gosh, Wolfman does have nards. It's really great. So Monster Squad has very good production value. Mm-hmm. Really, really good production value. The monsters are very well done, very well crafted. Tom Noonan plays Frankenstein. Of course, Tom Noonan went on to go to play in House of the Devil.
Still one of the Mike is holding a torch out, hoping that one day other people will recognize House
Not
of
a torch,
the Devil.
a grudge, major grudge.
Okay.
Very well done, very funny, but it really. It really falls to a 1980s film. When you watch this film, it's it's the haircuts, it's the clothing, it's the dialogue, it's the sort of the very Spielberg-esque familial the sort of familial dynamic. Right. It's definitely these like suburban. Suburban families, a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, and all the
bunch of white kids in peril.
A bunch of white kids in peril. Yes, there is a zero diversity save for Frankenstein the Wolfman.
Another movie that I think that would probably be like this is The Gate.
Yeah,
which I'm surprised actually didn't make the list.
Yeah,
the Gate is probably a scarier.
The Gate is
of the movies.
The Gate is in the top 326, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think.
A couple of votes.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah, it's probably in the probably about midway down. I think is the.
Go check out and see who voted for
the Gate's about midway down. Yeah, but the Gate's a good film too. But Monster Squad is a really solid film. There are a couple funny moments, but again, this is a film that is very much a 1980s sort of action-oriented romp that just happens to feature sort of
classic monsters,
all of the Universal monsters.
Sadly, all these classic Universal monsters that it makes reference to didn't make the list. No Dracula, Frankenstein's first offering.
One of them did. One of them did.
We'll get one of them, and my favorite of them got in.
Oh yeah, for sure. The best got in to the list. Monster Squad's a good film. I don't know. I can honestly say it would not make the top 100 for me.
Yeah, I think. We talked about this right before.
I'm just saying definitively. Definitively, I'm putting a mark down saying no Monster Squad.
If I had a substitution request here, swap out this for Ghostbusters.
If we're gonna have a goofy '80s film with horror elements,
Ghostbusters is a
comedy. Ghostbusters is a superior film for sure.
This movie poster made reference to Ghostbusters. It said, who you call if you got ghosts, but who do you call for monsters? Monster Squad.
Right.
So that was.
I mean, frankly, in a lot of ways, this is no different than Goonies. I mean, it's effectively Goonies with the Universal monsters.
Sure.
Yep.
And so gateway horror. I think certainly something safe to take your kids, and if they want to get something scary, this is a good one to break them in with. But again, I would prefer Ghostbusters.
Yep. All right, tied with Monster Squad, the 1984 film, which we just mentioned, Gremlins. Yep. Also a great film. Joe Dante, as you mentioned, who cut his teeth on a little film that didn't make the list called Piranha. Come on. It was on my top 25 list. Piranha didn't make it, but friggin' Gremlins did. Whatever. No, Gremlins is a great film. And this Steven Spielberg produced film.
Yeah, and Chris Walas doing the fabulous Gremlin creations. We just had a chance to see Chris do a presentation on a historical retrospective of his work at the Portland Horror Film Festival.
Yep.
Really cool stuff. And I think not surprisingly, Gremlins and Monster Squad, these were the last two movies to make the cut. Because they got the last two of the last three submissions we got were from Kian Dowdy, who we've referred to before as our youthful contributor, who was in a short film called Made You Look, which featured the craftsmanship of Chris Walas.
Whoa.
So
very meta.
So that's
you just brought it all full circle.
So I think it also explains
full circle.
But it not only is Kian a young man who this is an introduction to him, but he's had first-hand connection with one of the creators.
And I think more than anything, this points out that the horror is a big umbrella.
Yes,
it is a big tent that is welcoming to everyone. Everyone come on in the tent. Horror is willing to welcome you into the tent.
Absolutely. And we've opened the flaps to the tent. Come on in.
All right.
It's nice inside. I guess the other thing that I would want to comment on this is
on Gremlins. Yeah, well, we didn't really talk. Well, everybody knows Gremlins,
but the other voter who was they had their 19th actually I think this would make it their 5th and 6th selections. They had them juxtaposed. Right. Chris McEnroy, fabulous short film director doing comedy horror. He did death metal. He did. We Summoned a Demon, which is making the rounds through the horror festivals. He tells us that it's probably going to be released sometime at the beginning of the year. Fantastic,
hysterical bit,
funny stuff, and he loves the prosthetic prop makeups and stuff. So not surprisingly, both of these guys had Monster Squad and Gremlins, and in exact opposition to each other. And so it's just funny how the way that one worked.
So what stuck out for you with Gremlins? What do you remember from Gremlins?
Gremlins was just the madcap mischief of the Gremlins. When it's like the whole thing of don't get them wet. All the rules for the little fluffy ones are the mogwai. Right. And they're so cute, and it was interesting when we listened to Wayless talk about this, and he was like, "Oh shit! If I don't get this thing to work, if they don't buy the cute mogwai, I can't sell the Switch to the Gremlins." Right. And the fact that they made these things that everybody just fell in love with, I think Gremlins still stands the test of time as one of the great gateway horror films. There's the Gremlin in a blender. Was a move. It's like, or the Gremlin in a microwave. There are these things. It's like all these household appliances that Mama says don't mess with this stuff. When you're dealing with Gremlins, you throw that out the window. And
this is the ultimate listen to your mom. Yeah. But it didn't make the list. Critters didn't make the list. Right. We had no Critters. We had no Leprechaun. Right. Leprechaun did not make the list. Right. There was quite a few films.
Ghostbusters didn't make the list.
Ghostbusters didn't make the list, but there was quite a few films that Gremlins sort of spawned, no pun intended, that didn't quite make the cut. I think this is the superior product.
It is, and I think the design of the Gremlins was wonderful. The animation was wonderful. The kids were great in it. Yep. So this is, I think, in hindsight, I think Gremlins belongs on the list.
All right, you're putting it on.
I think
you're saying yes.
It's not one of my top 25 favorite horror movies, but I think it belongs.
Eric says yes. Yes to Gremlins. All right, let's move on to number 68 with the 1922 going into the way back machine. This is the oldest film we have on the list, right?
That's right. We had a vote for Pandora's Box, which is a 1929 movie. Yep. We had a vote for Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is 1921, I think. But this is the progenitor. This is the. I was kind of disappointed we didn't get Hexen on here, but
Hexen or Phantom of the Opera too, for that matter,
Phantom of the Opera. It's still that, which is the best of the silent,
the golden
Universal.
Era, the golden era.
Yeah, we called that the launching point, but I don't think there's any dispute that Nosferatu is a seminal movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Still scary.
Yeah, you had it on your list when we did the golden era. Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
I did not have it on my list.
That
was. I threw in Der Golem instead,
which is a good movie. Yeah. I think that was. I think what were the other ones?
Der Golem, Hexen, Phantom of the Opera,
Caligari,
Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Yeah.
When you get back to movies that are that old, there's just not a whole lot you have to pick from. The silent era. Oh, Hunchback, I think, was part of that era.
Yep.
I think there was an old Jekyll and Hyde, which was done better later on. Right. Anyhow. Nosferatu, German production with Max Schreck as the vampire. Mm-hmm. Haunting.
Yep.
So impressive in black and white. The fact that it's grainy old footage just makes it look like a found footage movie. I mean, it herky jerky action. This creepy looking dude coming in and out of the shadows. Yep. Moving around like he's like a vampire is not a sexy thing. It's like a rodent
Right.
Just like a blood-sucking...
And still so iconic. Yeah. You know, I would be willing to bet there's a lot of people who have seen the Nosferatu image. They have seen Max Schreck's vampire, and they don't even know what it's referring to, right? They've seen the image because that image is replicated so often now. At least, you know, the shadows, the silhouette of Dracula. I would be willing to bet there's a lot of people out there that don't even know what the origin is, and it's the 1922 film Nosferatu.
Well, we early on on our top 100, we came across Salem's Lot.
Right.
That vampire is Nosferatu.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Although
this is not your Bram Stoker's Dracula brought to you by Francis Ford Coppola, which didn't make the list. I don't think.
Not a Twilight vampire. Yeah.
Not a Twilight vampire. Right. Yeah.
So this is you see this thing creeping around your house, scare the shit out of you.
Yeah, this is more like I would say this is more like David Bowie as a vampire, where vampirism is actually an impediment. Right. It's not necessarily a cool and sexy thing. No. It's this like disease that you're stuck with.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I get out of Nosferatu. And I went back and rewatched it when we did the Golden Age of horror film, and I was impressed how well this one stood the test of time, because it really does. I mean, obviously you're watching a 1922 film, but it's real solid.
Yeah,
super solid.
You know, the performances. I mean, it's you have to take it for the era, and you know, even now, it's not an easy watch.
Right.
I mean, you compare it to Bela Lugosi's Dracula, and he's kind of cheesy. By comparison.
Yep.
I mean, there are some great moments in the. I don't want to. I know I bagged on Lugosi a little bit, but
how dare you bag on Bela Lugosi?
I do not drink wine.
You can bag on Lon Chaney. That's cool. Bela Lugosi, I don't know.
So anyhow, I don't think it there's any question that Nosferatu belongs on the list. I'm glad that it got some of the respect. It's usually one that people tend to forget about.
Yep.
But without Nosferatu, the genre doesn't start.
And we don't want to spoil it, but this is definitely the earliest in the top 100.
I would challenge our viewing audience to come up with an older film that would challenge Nosferatu.
Haxan. Although no, I think Haxan was also 1922.
Yeah.
I think it was also 1922. I'm pretty sure it was.
Right.
Semi-sure.
I'm surprised you didn't put that on your list. Not that you would have need to put it like one or two in order.
Right.
You're flying solo to get it on the list.
Right. All right. So moving on to number 67, we have the 2002 film Ju-On.
The Grudge.
Also known as The Grudge, not the Michelle, what's her name? Grudge.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, not the Sarah Michelle Gellar, which was a solid film.
Good movie.
But, because it was directed by Sam Raimi. That's why it was a good movie. No, we were talking about the original Grudge, and this film, man, so many scares, so dark, some of the craziest imagery, I think, ever in horror.
This is one of your top 4 ghost movies, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't recall, but I'm pretty sure I put this on my top 100 or my top 25 list, because it is a very.
We're going to the list. We're going to check this.
Go to the list.
Go on the list.
See if I'm telling the truth or not.
Campbell did not have it on his list.
What?
So we got
come on.
Gretchen, Joe Perry, Roberta Pennington, our friend from Starkitects. This was her number 2.
Oh wow. Maybe I put the Sarah Michelle Gellar version on the list.
Maybe, but yes.
No, I didn't.
So
I didn't. This film is so scary. In fact, there's a scene early on in the film where the mom is laying in the bed, and the weird little creepy pale boy with the black eyes.
Right. The black eyes. There's something about that.
He just like pops up out of nowhere, and you go, "Holy bananas!" And you just like hit the floor. But that's not even the scariest part, because then the ghost comes out over her face and like screams at her. Yeah, there's a lot of which is like, it's a slightly different take on the jump scare, it's not just the thing manifesting itself or appearing. It's like it appears and then it screams at you, right? So it's like a 1-2.
Well, I think
it's not just a 1; it's a 1-2.
Something about J-horror ghosts is that they are out to kill you.
Oh yeah, they are not messing around.
They're not just there to haunt your dreams.
There's no ambivalence.
This isn't Marley's ghost.
Right.
This is
not the ghost of Mr. Chicken with the indomitable Don Knotts.
Should have been on the list.
Should have been on the list. We'll get there.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
This list isn't over yet.
Checking the chicken. What's this?
The ghost and Mr. Chicken.
Oh, God.
Come on, man.
And the Apple Dumpling Gang.
Yes.
I guess. Yes. So The Grudge.
Yeah.
This is one of the high water marks for J-horror.
Yep.
We've got more J-horror to come, folks, so don't say this isn't the last of them.
No.
But this one is a significant piece because it's bridging the gap. Movies like this and The Eye and Ringu and Audition.
Yep.
These were movies that came out in the early 2000s that started bridging the gap from the bad habit of studio horror production, where we just weren't getting a lot of stuff in the 90s and the early aughts, and we started getting the Japanese started showing us how to do low to mid budget horror, how to effective scares. I think things like this inform things like Paranormal Activity.
Oh, absolutely.
And of course The Ring, right?
Right. Well, the Ring is a little bit more elaborate. It's in its production, but this one, it's really. It is speaking more to paranormal activity. It keeps within the house, right? Largely. I mean, there's a couple scenes where they go outside of the house, but I mean, largely it's in this. As we all know, things in Japan are smaller, and it is very tight,
compact. Yeah, we talked about that
very
in our review of
compact, very
movies,
tight spaces. And this is what I think makes this incredible. You were talking about in the last podcast Descent being claustrophobic. I would argue this is equally as claustrophobic. Yeah. In fact, there's a scene.
The staircase scene.
Well, the staircase scene is incredibly spooky, but even just like the idea of like being in this incredibly tight, compact bed, and you'd think there's no more space left, but no, the ghost crawls under the covers with you. The weird little boy is under the covers.
Oh, yeah.
And even when they're in there's another scene when they're in the shower and she is taking a shower and the ghost starts to somehow grow out of her head.
Yeah.
Which is just wow.
That was kind of gonzo.
Wow. Now, granted, the Japanese do, the Chinese, of course, are obsessed with vampires that jump and hop,
they're not allowed to show ghosts in Chinese movies.
Yes, you're right. And whereas in Japan, they are obsessed, of course, with water and hair, which I don't think are particularly scary. In this film, water and hair plays a major role, and it plays a major role in a super terrifying way.
Yes.
I would argue this one needs to be a little bit higher up on the list.
So do you like this better than Ringu?
Well, no. Ringu I like better, and we may get to that at some point in the future. This one is really solid though. All right, let's move on.
So we go to from Ju-on, The Grudge, to the 1980 film The Fog.
The Fog.
So this
that was the Scooby-Doo fog noise. I think. I'm pretty sure that was Scooby-Doo.
That's my foghorn. Come on, man. So this
John Carpenter. John Carpenter.
Yeah. So now this is our second John Carpenter movie. We had Prince of Darkness show up earlier.
Yeah. I think Prince of Darkness is better than The Fog.
Mm-hmm.
The Fog, to me, and we're not, of course, talking about the 2010 remake of The Fog.
No. This is the 1980 Jamie Lee Curtis Fog.
Which is funny because the 2000, I don't want to digress too much, but the 2010 version of The Fog, God, it might have even been earlier or later than that, but the remake version of The Fog plays like a Sarah Michelle Gellar horror film from the 1990s.
Which is not a good thing necessarily.
No, it's not a good thing. I mean, it looks...
I still know what you did last summer.
It looks, acts, and feels like one of those kinds of films, which is not good. This one, of course, is a good film. I think, it's one of those ones, if you're going to have a film like, Monster Squad or Gremlins, which is, largely kind of a nostalgic sort of vote. Mm-hmm. I think The Fog it plays to that nostalgia. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of, it's one of those, it's like, this is the first scary film I ever saw. Mm-hmm. And it's really not that scary. Right. Like, if you go back and look at The Fog now, right. It's, it's got a couple scares early on in the film, but then as you realize it's just a bunch of, haunted ghost pirates who are coming back right. to get their treasure.
And maybe I've just got a soft spot for it because it was our launching pad. But
right.
Prince of Darkness, I think, moves in front of The Fog.
Yeah,
in my book.
Yeah, no, The Fog is good. So when was the last time you saw The Fog?
Oh God,
1980.
Yeah, I saw it on VHS back, and I was in high school, so I unfortunately I don't have strong recollections of it, and I think that's particularly telling. So The Fog is, I think this. We said that we're getting into mostly solid films. Mm-hmm. I start looking at The Fog compared to some of the stuff that I know that just fell off, didn't make the list. It's like, nah, not sure, but I will. So this is this got on the list largely thanks to Ingo Tantz, mm-hmm. Who is oddly enough was invited along to bring his matinee expertise to the party. And he has an abiding love for an 80s movie.
Right.
In The Fog. I think this is his number 3 movie. So.
Yeah. No, The Fog is good. I mean, it's a great cast. Again, it's got like Janet Leigh. It's got Jamie Lee Curtis. It's got
mother and daughter.
It's got Adrienne Barbeau. I liked it. I think it's a good film, and I think it's nostalgic. I would maybe put it on the top 100.
Well, John Houseman's in this movie too.
John Houseman, yeah. For nostalgia purposes only. The funny thing is, we've been talking about like where the scares come. Mm-hmm. Does it come in the first act? Does it come in the last act? Like the descent, the scares kind of come in the second act. The Goodnight Mommy, the sort of scares come in the last act. Right. The scares all come in the first act.
Okay.
Right? It's like all the scares.
Well, you kind of don't
want
to do that for a horror movie.
Right. It's all sort of the setup, and then but by the time the demonic ghost pirates show up, it's not super scary.
Lost its traction. It was all the prompting, all the things like beware of these things. Like that's not scary.
Right. All right, let's move on to
one of your favorites.
One of my favorites, which
number 65.
Which I definitely put on the list. This, of course, close contemporary to The Fog. This feels like our 80s episode. Close contemporary to The Fog. This, of course, is 1979's Phantasm.
Yeah.
Starring the Angus Scrimm.
Rest in peace, Angus Scrimm.
Yes. Reggie Bannister as Reggie. Jodie, Mike, what a great movie. Just top to bottom. I mean, I think this is much like The Fog. I think, which is of course like a nostalgic cultural touchstone for a lot of people. For me, this really was. It was like one of the first films I remember like seeing advertisements on television for. And back in the day they wouldn't show the advertisements at like friggin' 4:00 in the afternoon. It was like you had to be up past 10 to see these kind of ads.
This was a movie for
or to hear them on the radio.
I think I saw this with Robert on HBO or Showtime,
right?
After hours, after the parents went to bed, and we turned on the horror movies.
And you took a matchbook and you jammed it into the dial, like between channels 32 and 33, so just enough so that you could get it, and it would kind of come in,
right? And
you could maybe see a boob. That was fantastic.
Well, because the thing that stuck with you was the silver sphere.
The silver sphere and Angus Scrimm.
Yeah,
Angus Scrimm. The thing I really like about the film is that really at the end of the day it's sort of it's a very endearing film about the love of two brothers. Two brothers who are just trying to keep it together as they're besieged with essentially space invaders from another planet, right. Who have come to harvest.
Yeah, I did find it a little odd that
bodies and
I think Angus as the thin man was
the tall man.
Was compelling as a villainous figure. I never really bought the alien kind of aspect of it.
That scene is so weird.
Yeah.
Like, and that's definitely a curveball in the last act
it is.
where they throw out the sort of the midget space alien dwarves, and then you go into this other dimension, and that's just a whole sort of bag of crazy. But what a great I think it's a great movie. I think it definitely belongs in the top 100. I think people obviously talk about Freddy and Jason and Michael and everything. Nobody ever talks about Angus Scrimm.
Right.
I mean, Angus Scrimm, he should be. I mean, he's definitely not considered in that like iconic horror pantheon of.
Phantasm's gone 4 deep. So they've gone. The last one was Phantasm 4
Ravager.
Oblivion.
Oh, Oblivion, right, not Ravager.
1998. They did also Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead, Phantasm 2, work print.
No, they just did a 5. It's Ravager.
Okay, so maybe I'm looking at Don Coscarelli's.
Oh, they just did. I think it came out 2017.
Okay, so
Phantasm Ravager
was Angus. Did he?
No, I think he had died by then. Yeah. Yeah, because he has just died within the last couple of years.
Interesting. Don Coscarelli also has to his ledger.
Yes.
Bubba Hotep.
Yeah, that's solid.
Fun mummy movie.
That is solid. All right, let's move on down the list to a film you are fond of,
yes.
very fond of, number 64,
The Bride of Frankenstein
from 1935. And
Golden Age.
Well, we talked about this at the latter half of the Golden Age.
Yeah, I think this is.
And I think we put this as our mark, didn't we, for the latter half of the Golden Age? I think we might have.
Yeah, this is the. I think it was either Bride of Frankenstein or Frankenstein. I know I'm fond of both movies.
Which do you prefer?
I'm slightly preferential to the original because of. I think that the Colin Clive gets more to do.
Yeah.
And the fact that Karloff. I think the introduction of Karloff as the monster, and the sympathetic monster is born with the first Frankenstein movie. That said, Bride of Frankenstein is so much fun. Elsa Lanchester as the bride
she's really, really great.
She's so much fun. And then there's like they had a bigger budget, so they did like the little miniature people and that kind of stuff, and it's
I recall when we went back and reviewed the films from the latter half of the Golden Age, and we were looking at I was looking at Bride of Frankenstein, and I rewatched all that, and I was like, oh my God, that was so weird how they did that. I'm not even sure to this day and like how exactly they shot that and how they integrated it into the film.
Right.
That was a really interesting little technique they did with the miniaturized people.
Right. And the the hermit.
Right.
And which was so wonderfully redone in Young Frankenstein, which we talked about earlier, where Gene Hackman plays the hermit.
Yep.
But it's the same kind of a thing where the hermit teaches Frankenstein how to talk, and it's like, good. It's like, all right. This is. I think there's humor to it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't get buried in the trappings of a lot of those other Golden Age movies where there's going to have to be a wedding.
Right.
And so.
Right.
And it also probably marked really the end of that sort of that universal period for a long chunk of time. You get Wolfman and you get Creature coming later, but this was the Hays Code. After this point, it's like, all right, you're done.
Right.
Stop.
Yeah, that is kind of when it shut off. I think it was a little earlier than that, but yeah, this was sort of on the cusp.
And I know that this is one of those movies that I think when they talk about best sequel horror movies, this was, I think when we talked about best sequels, I think this is Bride of Frankenstein. I think came up in that. In that
I think it did too.
So wonderful movie. It's Golden Age. Don't let that scare you from going and renting it.
Right. All right. All right. Also tied for we had another list, like a double tie here at 64. Although we'll really call this sort of like, I guess this would be 60. Well, 64, 65. Yeah. This is of course the 1974 movie Black Christmas, which I had like super crazy high on my list. I can't even remember how high I had. 18. Yeah. Did I have it 18 on my list? Yeah. 18, Black Christmas. Yeah. Well, this is some would argue. Yeah. Some.
No. 18, this is how many points you gave it. This would be your number 7 movie.
Number 7, yes. Right, yes. We're going, yes.
This is Sharon Yablon's number 1 movie.
Yeah.
So this is, you two thought very, very highly of it. It just fell off my top 25. It is for my money, the best slasher movie ever made.
Oh, yeah. It's so terrifying, so scary, so interesting. Also, speaking of claustrophobic, since we just got done talking about Ju-on the Grudge, I mean, this largely takes place in a sorority house. I mean, pretty much. Mm-hmm. It's just a very, very large sorority house. It takes place over Christmas break, right. And a lot of the ladies have gone home for Christmas break, right. But a couple have stayed behind.
And those who stayed behind are the unlucky ones.
They are the unlucky ones indeed. Of course, it had
Margot Kidder.
Featured Margot Kidder, who just recently passed away. Rest in peace, Margot Kidder. It, of course, featured, which was awesome. It featured SCTV alumni.
Coming up with it.
SCTV alumni. It was
Cudelea.
Yes.
No, Andrea Martin is
Andrea Martin. Yes, Andrea Martin was in the film, and she was great too. It's funny to see her as a very, very young woman because she had
the big glasses on,
and you don't think of Andrea Martin. You only think of Andrea Martin in a comedic context. Right. This film,
although she did play sort of the wiseacre,
of
the sorority house.
Yeah.
She was always the questioner.
Yeah, and this film was, of course, all shot up in Canada, hence Andrea Martin's participation in SCTV. Right. But yeah, this really was the film. In 1974, this predated Halloween by several years. It was obviously on the cusp or done contemporaneously to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, so there's a lot of great stuff coming out.
Last House
on the Left. But I mean, this really was one of the very, very first slasher films, and boy, what a creepy slasher.
Yeah, I think also we'd have to include Olivia Hussey.
Oh yeah,
who plays the lead?
Right,
she's,
right.
She's Jess.
Yep.
Who is the focal point for the creeper's attention.
Yep.
That it's, and they don't explain the guy, the killer. It's still a mystery. It is just
right. And unlike when we just this is somewhat of a contradiction in that we talked about The Strangers in the last episode and the fact that there is no exposition as surrounding The Strangers, but there's also very little dialogue too that sort of like has you guessing as to what their motive might be. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this case, at least you hear from the killer. You hear his voice multiple times over the phone, and there's a whole lot of dialogue and discussion around why it is this person is terrorizing the sorority girls.
This does go to I think to some degree this is definitely a thriller.
Oh yeah.
I think if you pull horror movie or not, this is a horror movie.
Oh, 100%.
But it is not. It doesn't have the supernatural element or the fantastical twists that we typically think, but in tone and tenor,
it is horror.
It is a scary movie. It's the intent. It's like you isolate the victims and you and so there's threats behind every closed door, right? Because there's something and the method, the strangulation thing. It's a bad way to go.
Yep. Yeah. That's a good film. Great soundtrack, too. Really, really creepy early 70s soundtrack. Stay away from the Black Christmas remake, which was terrible. And they put, in this case, that what we were just talking about, the fact there was no exposition in the remake of Black Christmas, they added tons of exposition, and they give you the whole backstory as to why this poor boy is terrorizing this house of sorority girls, and it's just dumb. It's just dumb and ham-fisted and very. I think Rob Zombie might have been a consultant on that. Sorry, Rob. I couldn't. Couldn't
resist. Can't get through 2 or 3 podcasts without bagging on Rob Zombie.
All right, that was number 64, Black Christmas from 1974. Definitely belongs on the top 100 list.
Yes, it does.
Maybe even a little higher.
It had a hot start on our. I think for a while there between because you and Sharon were two of the earliest submissions. Black Christmas was the number one film for about 3 or 4 days, and then it kind of dropped like a rock when it didn't get much love from anybody else.
It should be number one. It's that good. It is that good. All right, so number 63, a film I know you are super fond of, which is the ultimate of the slow burn horror films, 1973, 1 year before Black Christmas.
The Wicker Man.
The Wicker Man. We're not, of course, talking about the Nicolas Cage remake, which was
preposterous,
not so cool.
No, and it gave a new definition to overacting. The 73 Wicker Man really was. It's a police investigation of a cult or a Wiccans, and I know that. I've had this discussion with, I think, with Amy, our shaky can kitty, who really doesn't like the way that Wiccans are depicted. It's like, it's a bad mouse Wiccans. It's like, I don't know. It's just, it's culty.
It just shows them as a cult. That's what they are. It's a cult.
And the fact that they are, there's a bunch of sort of hippie love kind of aspect to it. And then there's a dark underpinning to it. And I know that I had a good bit of fun playing the soundtrack, the jangly kind of hippie soundtrack, unmistakably
the druidic folk jam.
Yeah. But it's replete with people in mass doing rituals, and then it's like Burning Man,
and you get Burning Man. It's the origin of Burning Man.
But
thanks, Wicker Man.
And Edward Woodward, who's our lead protagonist, doesn't know when to just kind of let things lie, and he kind of alternately gets seduced into and is obsessed with the goings on.
Right.
And the great Christopher Lee plays Lord Summerisle.
Yes.
And he's got this commanding presence, and Christopher Lee with a mullet.
I forgot he had a mullet.
It's a, as you're saying, a slow burner. It's
slow burn, because this is like slow burn.
Literal burn.
not the last third of the film. It's like the last 5 minutes of the film.
Yeah,
it takes you you got to go all the way to the end to get the punchline.
I think in a way, I think we talked about Goodnight Mommy in the last podcast, and I think it has seen that you described a flatness to it.
Yeah,
an emotional flatness.
Yep.
And I think you get some of that with The Wicker Man.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of throws you off, and it makes the punchline even more powerful.
Yep. The storyline, it draws you in. It's a good storyline, and it's a good mystery. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have rampant jump scares and gore. Right. It doesn't rely on that. It's dread.
Yep.
I mean, it's that kind of.
This is not Cannibal Ferox.
No, this is no. Or
this is not Dr. Butcher, MD, or medical deviate.
Killer, right? Yeah, Dr. Butcher. Oh, good Lord. So did you put Dr. Butcher on your list?
No, but I should have. Now that I'm saying the words Dr. Butcher, it should have been on the list.
So I think The Wicker Man, although it was not on my top 25, who was the champion for Wicker Man? We got 3 votes on Wicker Man.
Okay.
Gwen and Gretchen.
Yep.
And Kian.
Yeah.
It looks like. Okay.
Yeah, solid film. I would put it on the top 100. For sure. Although we are getting to that point in the list.
No. Andrew Milior.
Okay.
It was not Keanu. It was like, that's a weird one for a 13-year-old boy to really dig into, because it's a real heady, dramatic horror movie, and there's not a lot of special effects, that kind of stuff.
Okay. The opposite of dramatic, heady horror film, of course, is the 2014 film What We Do in the Shadows, coming in at number 62.
Yeah.
The exact opposite of The Wicker Man.
Yeah.
I can't think of 2 films on this list that are so polar opposites.
Yeah. No, that where The Wicker Man was had a certain dramatic heft and weight and somberness to it.
Right.
what we do in the shadows is wacky.
Yeah. Well, Jesus, the first 10 minutes of that film where they're explaining kind of like how they all came to live together and how they are living together. I think the only thing that rivals that for me in terms of comedic beat is the beginning of Raising Arizona. Like the first 10 minutes of Raising Arizona. I mean, I don't know if he stole from that or if he was inspired by that, but oh my God. I mean, that first 10 minutes, brilliant. And brilliant fun.
There are so many good jokes.
Endless good jokes. Endless.
This is so, and I think when we first talked about Taika Waititi,
right?
Well, actually, no. I think that we had Thor Ragnarok had already come out by that point. I bet.
Yeah,
but he certainly made himself known for Thor Ragnarok. But he gets a much meatier acting job in this because he gets to play Viago, who's this slightly effeminate, dapper vampire.
Who's kind of like idiot grandchild vampire.
And Jermaine Clement, who plays this kind of washed up gothy rocker, too cool for school vampire. Yes. Who's not as cool as he thinks he is.
Yes.
It just has all. It's Spinal Tap meets vampires. It's really
I think that's pretty apropos.
And the whole, it's like the guy that they bring in. It's like that you're not supposed to. You don't devour your
the young buck.
What do they call him? Your familiars.
Yeah.
It's like and there's the groupie wannabe vampire guy.
Right.
So clever, so funny, and I know that this is if you enjoyed Thor Ragnarok, check this out. If you're just a fan of comedy horror, this is one of the high water marks.
If you're just a fan of comedy, this is just a great comedic film because there's really, I mean, there's a little bit of blood, but there is absolutely nothing scary about this film whatsoever.
No,
there is not a single scare. In the film.
I think that when the people get offed, it's sort of in service of the comedy.
Right. So absolutely, yeah. Yeah, definitely a great little film.
This was on my list. This was number 11 on my list.
Wow.
Yeah.
High marks for what we do in the shadows.
I'm a fan of the horror comedy.
Yep. All right. Going now to our final film of the podcast, number 61, Don't Look Now, number 1973.
A Michael Campbell favorite.
Oh, yeah. This is a great film. I put this big high on the list. It's a great film. A very young Donald Sutherland is in the film. I think we talked about this. I talked about this extensively in the best ghost movies of all time. It, of course, features one of the scariest things to me, crazy midget-like dwarf creatures.
I'll never get tired of Mike Campbell versus dwarves.
And there is arguably one of the, and I think I put this also in, I referred to Don't Look Now, in scariest scenes of all time. Yes. There's at the very tail end of the film, I won't ruin it, but there is a very, very strange, very off-putting scene. And it's, I think going back and reflecting on that is that nowadays it's the jump scare, it's the the sort of manufactured
raw shock,
the manufactured atmospherics. This was like very strange, almost like psychedelic film technique mixed with very eerie early 70s soundtrack. That all that stuff taken together as an amalgam really creates a very, very peculiar and very off-putting kind of scene. And man, oh man, did they knock it out of the park.
Yeah, and Donald Sutherland in his prime.
Donald Sutherland in his prime, can't beat that. I mean, hot on the heels of probably MASH, right? Like he had probably just done MASH. It was obviously before he did The Great Animal House, which came out in 1978.
And before Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Before Invasion of the Body Snatchers, following on the horror, following in the horror genre. But yeah, Don't Look Now, such a solid movie. Yeah. Such a solid movie. I would.
You had this one got a lot of love from. We're now getting into the area where we're getting a lot of You didn't actually have it the highest of the folks.
No,
Joe Moe had it. It looks like it's his number 6 movie.
Wow.
Yeah,
so we got that's high.
Scott Alley, our friend from.
Well, Scott Alley was the one that I had not seen. In the interest of full disclosure, I had not seen Don't Look Now until Scott and I were talking about the scariest movies of all time, and he said, "Oh, you should really see Don't Look Now. It's this Donald Sutherland film from 1973," and I gave it a look, and man, oh man, was he right?
So my
right.
My homework is go see Don't Look Now.
Yes.
Your homework is go see Raw.
Yes. And Raw, we didn't talk about.
Raw was number 82.
82, that's right. I have not seen Raw yet. I do need to see Raw. Yeah, for sure. All right, good list. Any other big surprises for you on the list?
No,
other than we covered a lot from the 1980s. Yeah. I felt like we 80'd it up tonight.
Yeah.
There was a lot of 80s.
I just realized that we probably squeezed in one bonus movie in here for you guys because we have the tie at 64. I didn't actually allocate the room for it, and so
this is the top 101. The best. See, that's where math gets you. Yeah. Math just causes problems.
Almost smart little kids. So, I think if I'm looking at surprises, I think to some degree Monster Squad.
Monster Squad is a surprise in that it scored so high. I mean, it is. I mean, I think this is probably the ultimate in the sort of loving nostalgia.
Right.
This is it. I mean, because it's really as we already said, like if you compare this to Ghostbusters, there's like no comparison. Ghostbusters is a superior film.
Relative nostalgia, though, because I think that with Chris McEnroy,
right.
Probably our age or somewhere around there, that would come into play. But Kean, young kid,
right? Also, that's true. That's true.
Suggests that what it does is it plays well to a young audience,
right?
So
right.
I think it's
it has stood the test of time.
Yes, it has, and I think it also tells you that we haven't had many good horror movies for kids come out in the last 20, 30 years. I mean, it's really you have to go back that far to get to Gremlins and Monster Squad and probably Goonies and Ghoulies and all that kind of stuff.
All right, let's go down the list really fast. Monster Squad on the list or not?
No.
Nope. Gremlins on the list or not?
Yes.
Okay, you say yes. I'm no on Monster Squad, maybe on Gremlins. Nosferatu.
Absolutely, yes.
We're saying yes. Ju-On, yes. Solid yes. The Fog,
no.
Maybe. I'm a maybe. You're a no.
Yeah.
Phantasm, hell yes. One of the greats. Bride of Frankenstein,
yes.
Big yes. Black Christmas,
yes.
Super big yes. Wicker Man.
I think so. I think it's a little higher than I'd like it to be. I didn't vote for it, but I think it's in the...
There's a little hesitance. There was a little hesitance there.
Yeah, I think it's... I really like the movie. There may be other ones that I might have picked about it. I don't know.
Okay.
So
all right.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. What we do in the shadows?
Yes.
Sure. Why not? It's a fun movie. And Don't Look Now.
Mike says.
Yes. All right. Join us for episode 37.
Can you believe 37 episodes in?
Woo! That's a lot. That's a lot of horror. Episode 37, we were going to be covering number 60 to number 51. Check that out here soonish,
in a couple of weeks.